Yeah, so today, in how the United States is collapsing, the Democrats have launched an all out war on the Republicans, and I think it's worth documenting. So, hello, our American friends to whom the country is being stolen from you. I hope you're enjoying how things are going. The first thing they're doing is gaying up the army. I don't think I'm understating that. The U.S. Department of Defense has issued a memorandum for the senior Pentagon leadership, commanders of combatant commands, and DoD field activity directors to promote and protect the human rights of LGBTQI plus persons, quote, around the world. That's right. You're charged with protecting gay rights in Pakistan.
Have you seen the Onion video about gays in the military?
No.
Right, so everyone has to look this up. There's an Onion piece from like years ago when the gays were trying to get into the military, and they called some army colonel on, and they're like, "Colonel, why can we not have gays in the army?" And he's like, "Look, gays are just too precious. We can't risk them. We can't send our gays in." And then they say, "What about the don't ask, don't tell policy?" Well, we knew some gays would get through, but if we learned that they were on the front lines, it would harm our commanders seriously, so we just don't ask and don't tell. God bless those gays on the front line. And then he ends the video with like, "God bless America, God bless our gays." I mean, now it's not just America's gays, global gays.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, no, it's...
Global gays are too special to be left. To
Iran's gays must be protected. You have to understand. It's the policy of the Department of Defense to pursue an end to violence and discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or sex characteristics. And the DoD will lead by example in the cause of advancing the human rights of LGBTQI plus persons around the world. How special. They are committed to strengthening existing efforts to combat the criminalization by a foreign government of LGBTQI plus people and conduct and expand efforts to combat discrimination. So, I mean, it literally, like, it's actually, I think, going to end up in an invasion of some country because they discriminate against gays.
Gays are too precious.
They're too precious, mate. Like, you got to understand. Like, we the West have a duty to overthrow the Iranian government because of what they do to gays.
There's a part in the video as well where the interviewer's like, "Well, how many men is worth one gay?" And he goes, 7.
They're going to expand ongoing efforts to ensure that regular engagement with government, civil society, citizens, and the private sector to promote the respect for human rights of LGBTQI plus persons and combat discrimination, blah, 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 blah. And this, of course, comes after Biden issued an executive order to ensure that everyone in the military is now transgender. It's the loony left on the march. So if we go to the next one, it doesn't end there, of course. This is not loony left enough for two senators, Tammy Duckworth and Mazie Hirono, who say they will vote against all Biden nominees who are not racial minorities. And they will only vote for a white nominee if the nominee is LGBTQ.
Literally, we hate white people, vote Democrat.
Yes.
I mean, what else can you call that? I mean, those are senators as well, so what does that bring it? They only have 50 senators. So that means they can't pass anything without these people's approval.
But literally, rebels in his own party against white people. That's how absolutely infected with social justice the Democrats are at this point.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so anyway, moving on. Biden's in trouble for stopping the construction of the border wall. He obviously put a stop to the wall on his first day because why wouldn't you be the person who creates a migrant crisis? The Congress had approved $1.4 billion to build the border wall. Biden had stopped it, and the Government Accountability Office has initiated an inquiry into whether the president broke any laws by freezing the funds because, of course, Congress is supposed to control the power of the purse. He's not going to get found guilty of anything because strings will be pulled. Because Biden, frankly, is just a puppet. And we can see that Biden's a puppet because Kamala has been placed in charge of the crisis that he created. Harris is apparently going to lead the efforts to deal with Mexico and the Northern Triangle. She looks like she's about to assassinate him, doesn't she, in that picture?
She's being put in charge of domestic policy, and soon she'll be in charge of foreign policy decisions, and then she'll be in charge of military decisions, and then Joe can take a nap.
Well, I mean, he's basically already at that point. Yeah. You've just kind of
but he can go sleeping with the fishes, you know?
Yeah, she does look like she's waiting for the poison to work, doesn't she? Yeah. Anyway, so she's going to be dealing with this, and it's a very important task, we are told, which is fair. And the question is, well, who's responsible for the 100,000 migrants that are turning up in every month at America's borders? And the answer is, of course, Joe Biden himself. And we know this because we did a segment about this in a previous podcast where the migrants themselves just said, Joe told us we could come. I was like, okay, great.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a clip from, I think it was a guy in Venezuela who was showing Spanish CNN, so the version they transmit south, was them just taking quotes from Joe Biden and saying Joe Biden says that he's going to relax the border walls and blah, 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 blah. Like, hour after hour, the same story.
Yeah.
Basically, the message from CNN, come to America.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And it's because it's Biden's policy. It was on his website. He's been saying it repeatedly. He stopped the construction of the border wall. And so 100,000 a month have arrived. And that number's probably going to increase. It's not been good news, really, because photos and footage from the border turned out that, in fact, Biden's putting kids in cages in exactly the same way that Trump and Obama was doing. Apparently, footage from the Donner facility a facility at Donner, Texas, was released by Axios and Project Veritas, showed migrant juveniles living in cramped pods, laying on the floor wrapped in foil blankets. Images highlight the Biden administration's struggle to mitigate the influx of illegal immigrants that Biden has caused. But the point is, we say that Biden has caused these things, and that is ascribing agency to Joe Biden, where I don't believe much really exists anymore. I mean, like, Biden's probably struggling to contain his own agency over his bowel movements at this point. You know, he's definitely struggling with his agency of climbing upstairs, and so it's unsurprising that a memo was put around by a top White House communications team member that apparently said this: please be sure to reference the current administration as the Biden-Harris administration, which is the first time this has happened. Because obviously it's always the Trump administration, the Obama administration, the Clinton administration. It's not the Clinton vice president administration, and so that's really, really weird. Really weird that Joe Biden is essentially kind of sunsetting himself from his own presidential administration and sending Kamala Harris to do all the dirty work for him. Again, like, the pictures of her looking like she's waiting for the poison to work is weird and I think prescient. But anyway, this obviously follows on from the other day's gaffe where Biden was like, yeah, so now when President Harris and I took a virtual tour of the vaccination center in Arizona, he didn't even correct himself. So it's like, right. So Biden's calling her President Harris. It's the Biden-Harris administration.
This isn't the first time either.
And she's going to go and clean up his mess. It's not the first time, but the previous times he corrected himself. Yeah. That's the thing. This time he didn't correct himself. So it's like, right, okay. Just someone put this guy in a nursing home away from Andrew Cuomo. Not one of those nursing homes. I'm sure the nursing homes in Delaware are much nicer. Yeah, exactly. Not a monster. Yeah, Christ. But there was an amazing clip of Biden signing an executive order and then not really knowing what's going on afterwards. And I mean, I don't think we're overstating it to say that he is clearly a man with early onset, well, not even early onset, just Alzheimer's. Let's watch the clip.
So thank you, Mr. President, for your confidence.
Well, thank you for willing to do it. Now we're going to get down to business here, and Ron, who am I turning this over to?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think it's time for our friends in the press to leave now. Thank you.
Mr. President, how are you going to say a the children in the border facilities? Are you going to visit the border?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
The vacant stare of a man who has absolutely no idea what's going on around him. That's what that looks like to me.
Who am I turning this over to?
Yeah, I'm going to sign.
Press the leave now.
Yeah, I'm going to sign this over. Oh God, get them out of here. This looks really bad. It looks like Joe Biden is an ancient, empty suit, a puppet for the Kamala Harris administration and what I just suppose we could just call the deep state that surrounds him and her. Like, he's clearly not in charge of what his administration is doing. It's clearly other people, and he's just agreed to become the front man for it. Apparently, later on today, in fact, there will be Biden's first press conference. So we're 3 months into Biden's administration. He hasn't given a press conference yet, which is weird. Probably because it's going to be deeply embarrassing.
Well, it'd be live, wouldn't it?
Exactly. It's going to be live. He's going to have to take questions that he presumably won't be prepared for, and he's going to have to give answers off the cuff. And so this is going to be deeply embarrassing. So I look forward to watching this, to be honest, because if there's one thing that I enjoy watching, it's the Democrats failing at whatever it is they're doing. But anyway, that's none of this is the important stuff, right? The important stuff is stuff like this. The Voting Reform Act, HR1, which has been styled by the Democrats, as reported on Lotus.com, as the For the People Act. And it's a comprehensive voting, elections and ethics bill that was passed in the House of Representatives on the 3rd of March and is going to the next house. But the thing about this is essentially the guarantee of future fortification of elections, which is very interesting, right? So the bill includes many reforms, such as the requirement for the state chief election officials to establish an automatic voter registration system, entailing the procurement of citizens' information from government databases and agencies, such as the DMV and places like that, and federal agencies, including the Department of Defense and Social Security Administration. So that in itself is a staggering centralization of power.
Is that even constitutional?
No, probably not. It's probably, I mean, I don't know, but it's ridiculous, right? And even if it is technically constitutional, the point is, should there be this kind of centralization of government in the nation in which the separation of the branches of government is a point of pride and a point of the proper working of the system? The answer is probably no. Right? The answer is probably no. If you don't want to register to vote, you shouldn't be forced by the government to register to vote. Unlike Australia, where you do.
Even if it's possible in the letter of the law, this certainly isn't in the spirit of the law. The law here being the Constitution.
Of course, there's going to be the introduction of automatic voter registration. Because the thing is, right, the Democrats, I think they've worked out, look, there are loads of people out there who don't vote and aren't interested in voting. And that means that we can have them down as Democrat voters. The ability for voters to register on the same day and vote without having to provide ID, of course. Because why not? I mean,
register on the same day and vote without ID.
But they're all going to be automatically registered anyway, so what's the point in that?
That's not a problem. No one's ever going to be able to do fraud with that kind of thing.
No, don't be silly, right?
Oh, who hasn't turned up? Oh, that person.
Of course,
oh, I'm that person.
Of course. There's going to be a requirement for political action committees to disclose their donors, which is interesting. I don't know why they've got that in there. But the requirement for presidential candidates to disclose their tax returns, okay. The legislation will also enable citizens to vote by mail without providing an excuse and will force states to count ballots that arrive by mail as late as 10 days after an election. What are the odds of all of this giving another sort of 2020 result? You know, isn't this just really interesting how the fortification of elections is going to become an established part of American politics now?
We just don't know the result for 10 more days.
Sorry, you'll find out after we've printed enough ballots. Democrats framed HR1 as key legislation that's aimed at increasing access to the polls and preventing corruption, because I suppose they can't even choke on their own irony. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, said the bill would restore people's faith in government, in that the government works for the public interest and the people's interest, not the special interests. Nancy, shut up. No one believes you at all, ever, in any way, shape or form. We know you're lying, right? Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, this is going to be a good one, stated that the legislation would combat all of these voter suppression efforts by restoring critical parts of the Voting Rights Act, making it easier, not harder, to vote by automatically registering voters when they get a driver's license. Yes, I'm sure that's what you think it will do. Biden has released a statement saying, I look forward to working with Congress to refine and advance this important bill. I mean, how else would you have won? And I look forward to signing it into law after it's passed through the legislative process, which it's going through now. It went through the House of Representatives and it's passed to the Senate, and it only just passed with 10 votes in the House of Representatives. Mitch McConnell has described it as a power grab. We already had record turnouts, so this is not to drive up turnout. Turnout's already driven up. It's to take over the Federal Election Commission so it can be a prosecutor. It is to provide public funding for elections. It's to provide same-day registration, which I just looked at the survey that said something like 81% of American people are concerned about something like that, leading to voter fraud. Oh, I don't think you need to be concerned about the thing that's already happening. It's about eliminating voter ID at the polls, which American people support 72 to 25.
Where's the evidence for that? Come on, cite your source for that poll. I want to see it. There's no way 72% of the American public oppose voter ID.
I don't
buy it.
72% of the American public opposing voter ID?
Yeah.
I think that's probably true. Oh, so no, I'm probably thinking of it the wrong way around. But I would like to see the source on that too. It also mandates what is called ballot harvesting, which is going around and picking up ballots of other people. And when this is explained to them, they oppose that 83 to 16. So it's...
voter ID support 72. So 72 support.
Yeah, 72% support voter ID and 83% are opposed to ballot harvesting that is going to be made legal by the Democrats' latest initiative. So this is essentially the Democrats changing the system, as they always try to change the system, because the system is the problem. It gets in the way of their brave new world. And this is them putting the fortification procedures into place, so forever onwards the United States will have fortified elections. And interestingly, you're always going to have Democratic presidents from now on. Don't know why you guys love the Democrats so much, but you just keep voting in overwhelming numbers for the Democrats, and that will never ever stop, no matter how you vote in your elections. It's really interesting, isn't it? Mark Weaver, an Ohio-based election law attorney, warned H.R. 1 is an attempt to use the Democrats' slim majority to unlevel the playing field and take away the rights of roughly half the voters in the country. Well, that's probably true. Republican strategist Jay Williams said this would be devastating for Republicans if passed, which it probably will be. It will also allow the government to make the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico the 51st and 52nd states, handing the Democrats 4 more Senate seats. So that's really interesting. Mitch McConnell concluded that these folks, the Democrats, are not interested in compromise. Well done for finally realizing that. They're interested in passing all of their bills to remake America in spite of the mandate they did not get last year as rapidly as possible. Yeah, maybe, Mitch, if you had spoken up when Trump was like, hey guys, I think there might be something a bit suspicious about this election. Maybe we need an investigation. Instead, you went and carried on as normal, didn't you, Mitch? Maybe if you'd spoken up when it was relevant and not after the fact, when they can now fortify every election from here on out, this would have mattered. But it doesn't matter now, so let's carry on. The Ninth Circuit Court has ruled that the Americans have got no right to carry guns. Hopefully this is going to go to the Supreme Court and get knocked down. But this comes from a Hawaii case where the judges had basically ruled that, apparently, you may own a gun, but you may not carry a gun. And they say a careful review of the history of early English and American regulation of carrying arms openly in the public square. The court concluded that Hawaii's restriction on the open carrying of firearms reflects long-standing prohibitions. Therefore, the conduct they regulate is outside the historical scope of the Second Amendment. Yeah, right. The right to keep and bear arms, the actual bearing of the arms, is outside of the scope of the Second Amendment.
You can only bear them within your own household. Yeah,
don't give me this nonsense. That's obviously not right. So, I mean, I'm sure the Supreme Court will knock this down, but either way, it's ridiculous. Thankfully, one of the judges was absolutely outraged. Judge O'Scanlane stated that the majority holds that while the Second Amendment may guarantee the right to keep a firearm and self-defense in one's home, it provides no right whatsoever to bear, i.e. carry that arm. In his view, the majority's decision not only undermines the Constitution's text, but also half a millennium of Anglo-American legal history. Obviously. Why would I have a gun if I wasn't allowed to walk around with it? What would be the point? But of course, this is hot on the heels of the Boulder, Colorado shooting, where a white man decided to shoot another bunch of white people, and Biden didn't
clearly an anti-white attack.
Clearly an anti-white attack. Why do white people keep doing this to other white people? But Biden wasted no time condemning both white people and guns. It's not true. He didn't condemn the white people this time. He called for a nationwide ban on assault weapons. Not really sure what that means. Any weapon used to assault someone? I mean, what does he think a weapon is? Weapons are for assaulting.
I remember he did give a speech when he was Obama's VP, talking about the fact that you shouldn't need to own any kind of rifle or anything like this. You should just buy a shotgun. And if someone does break into your house, just fire the shotgun in the air twice and that'll do it. It's like...
Oh, well, then, job's done then, I suppose.
But it's a really stupid argument. It's just like, certain kinds of guns shouldn't be accepted because I think that they're more deadly. I don't know if that's good enough, because then why can you not just say that the argument of, well, Joe, you don't need that shotgun, do you? You just need a musket.
Yeah, but Joe, the reason I've got a gun is because it's deadly. I want the most deadly gun. Because if someone breaks into my house, I want to make sure that they're solved.
Cole's got the minigun at the
yeah, well, but basically, I mean, I don't know the intention of this person who's breaking into my house. So I want the most effective means of neutralizing that person, because they might be here to kill me and my family. I mean, I think there's a perfectly reasonable position to hold, frankly. And this is coming from someone who lives in a country where it's illegal to defend yourself. While we're waiting on more information on the shooter, his motive and the weapons that he used, the guns, magazines. See, Joe doesn't even have the information when he's making the statement. I don't need to make wait another minute, let alone another hour, to take common sense steps that will save lives in future. Thanks, Joe. So he wants to ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, of course. And this is on the heels of, again, they're coming for everything that you have. They want to completely remake the United States into something that is not the United States. This is a really interesting one, this next one. The Biden administration has urged the Supreme Court to allow police to enter homes and seize guns without a warrant. Now, that seems like, you are literally overturning, literally 500 years, in fact more, probably about 700 years of English legal development at that point. So the agents of the king in the 15th century were not allowed to enter into a commoner's home without that commoner's permission or without a warrant, right? This was a huge innovation in the rights of the individual under what was at the time, of course, a monarchy. And this was what we built our constitutional democracies upon. The idea that the state actually is restricted from taking action against its own citizens. And the Biden administration is like, yeah, but have we considered that I'm in charge now and I want those guns? Because I really want those guns, right? So this is based on a domestic spat between an old husband and wife over a coffee mug, right? They have this argument and the police are called, and the police seize the guns of the man, despite the fact that he has no history of violence or self-harm or anything like this. And when the police seized the guns, they didn't claim it was because of an emergency or to prevent imminent danger, because there was none, apparently. Instead, the officers argued that their actions were a form of community caretaking, which is a narrow exception to the Fourth Amendment's warrant requirement, apparently. And so this has meant the First Circuit Court has sided with law enforcement and said that the officer must act as a master of all emergencies, who's expected to provide an infinite variety of services to preserve and protect the community's safety. It's like, okay, but does that mean just taking someone's guns while he's not in the house? Because that's what happened. The guy left.
How long could they seize the guns for? Was there a time limit?
No, just there was none given, as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
But the point is, they've just been like, okay, he's not here. We're just going to take his guns then. Why?
It doesn't make any sense.
No. But this has given police elbow room to take the appropriate action, and the people, the opposition to this, warned that extending the community caretaking exception to homes would be anathema to the Fourth Amendment because it would grant police a blank check to intrude upon the home of any individual, which it would, because what's the limiting principle here? Why shouldn't they do this? And the Biden administration glossed over these concerns and in their amicus brief to the High Court called on the justices to uphold the First Circuit's ruling, noting that the ultimate touchstone of the Fourth Amendment is reasonableness. If the judgment, the Justice Department argued that warrants should not be presumptively required when a government official's action is objectively grounded in a non-investigatory public interest such as health or safety. As in, if they just say, well, this is for the public interest, this is for health and safety, we're coming in and we're taking your guns, then the Biden administration wants that to be fine.
So there's an argument about if you're attending a house and you want to go into the house, you need a warrant, usually, right? But if you know that there's a murderer in there or there's something that's about to be dangerous, therefore it's okay to enter anyway without a warrant, because then you've got the justification of imminent harm.
Sure.
But there's nothing here for that. There's just let's just rob the guy. And Biden's administration is just like, yeah, we probably should be able to just rob people.
Yeah.
Like,
here's a blank check.
The guns are expensive. They just took hundreds of dollars off of them.
Probably thousands.
So depends how many.
But either way, they've just disarmed a citizen who they had no right to disarm. And now the Biden administration is like, yeah, good. Next, we'd like to disarm more citizens, even though, again, we don't have any legitimacy for doing this. So, I mean, we don't know how that's going to fall in the end, but it's just part of a much larger pattern of behavior from the Biden administration, which is to turn America into Germany, into a European country where the people don't really have rights and rights are constructed by the state rather than being natural, and therefore your right to self-defense has been taken away from you. Yeah, exactly. All of these things are not yours, in fact. They're other people's.
If your rights come from the state, what happens when the state changes and now they don't agree that that's a right?
Well, the police are now allowed to enter your house and take your guns without your consent. If you enjoyed this segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full broadcast live every weekday at 1 p.m. UK time on lotuseaters.com.